Hi guys, so last time we started with explaining acupuncture. So the first thing we talked about is chi and how it affects our body, what chi has a meaning in our day-to-day life. Today we are going to go a little bit deeper into a theory aspect. So today we are going to talk about one of the most fundamental principles on which acupuncture is based on, or you can say most of the Chinese culture, which has a link to Daoism, is based on. So we are going to talk about yin and yang. What is yin and yang? Yin and yang in the most basic form is like positive and energy. It is like dark and bright, or you can say that it's kind of a part of universe where you have a duality nature. So it has different names in different culture, it has different forms, it has different understanding, but the core idea is still the same. So let us understand what this yin and yang is. When you talk about yin and yang through a TCM perspective or as a Chinese culture, then we talk about this black and white circle which completes a circle. Black part, white part, like we call it fishes. So the black fish and the white fish, and then there is a dot in the middle which is black inside a white and a white dot inside a black area. What does this actually symbolize? So it is something, let us go back to the story of how the world was created according to Taoism. It is believed that there was this kind of a supernatural entity called Panthu, and he was in a deep slumber. So he was in a very deep state of nothingness. There is no thought absolutely. We talk about Uji in our Tai Chi videos, that is nothingness. There is not even the thought that there is nothing. So the thought itself doesn't exist. So from there, suddenly when a thought arises due to some disturbance, and a thought is something that starts creating a duality. Now, when I say duality, the concept is very similar to the Indian concept of Advaita and Dvaita. So, Dvaita is basically two aspects of it. So, you have one and zero, like in computer language, one and zero, binary system. So, again, when you have a binary system, there bound to be an attractive force between the two. When there is male and female, there bound to be an attraction between them. What actually happened was when Pantu had this thought, it created a division between the whole world. Like you can imagine, like the universe to be a sphere with nothingness. It is one, and then his thought is basically just splitting the world into two halves. So these two halves, one becomes the yin, one becomes the yang. So when these two are split, naturally there is going to be an attraction between them. They are part of each other. It is like magnetic field between them, and they tend to come towards each other, but they are not able to join forces because of this energy that is dividing them. So this energy is basically the chi that we talked about, and the shan is what keeps them together yet doesn't allow it to come together. So shan is something which is a whole idea of yin and yang and chi together. So they want to come together, but they are not able to. So this intermixing of yin and yang creates this whole universe. And this intermixing, why it creates, is again based on the thought. Once the duality is created, more and more thoughts are getting piled up. Each and every aspect of this yin and yang is getting further and further divided innumerable times, and that creates more and more possibilities. So division creates the universe, and it creates more and more problems or more and more things that are acquired in the universe. Okay, so this is how the idea of yin and yang came to exist. So in this, when the yin and yang got split, some part which had more yang to it, that will go towards the sky. So let's say birds or the clouds, air, all these aspects tend to be more yang, while more towards the yin, that is the earth, the animals on the earth or underwater creatures, these all come under the yin aspect. And run, which is the human beings, they come exactly in the middle. the equal proportion of yin and yang, they make up the human being. That is what the theory suggests. So we are the ones that are supposed to link the nature towards each other. So humans are the species who have the ability to go back in go back to that original state of Wuji. Same thing in Indian culture also is that when you have this Dvaita concept, so the binary, two things when divided, that leads to the creation. And when you go backwards, trying to become Advaita, where there is no duality, you go to the state of Purna, that is, you can say Shiva. So that is the purpose of every living being, is to reach back to its original form. So till we reach that original form, we will keep on having different kinds of possibilities, different kinds of disorders, different kinds of changes happening in the world. So these changes are interlinked, and they are the result of the splitting nature of yin and yang, this innumerable divisions of yin and yang that is happening. It's a little bit difficult to put it in words because last time I talked about the Chinese concept or the Daoist ideologies are something that can be only felt or only understood through a certain level of intellect, but it cannot be actually explained in words. You need to put yourself in their place, in their shoes. In the Taoist eyes, you have to look at the nature, and you will be able to slowly understand how the world works. And it is not an intellectual thing, because if you use your thought, like you try to analyze things, how what is yin, what is yang, how yin and yang works, how these things work, then you will be falling short to certain extent. So that is why they have devised certain exercises, certain meditative techniques, certain qigong exercises like tai chi chuan, qigong. Then you have dantian, shunlian. All these things, they help you kind of go back to that core and feel this change in nature. To understand these processes, understand this phenomena that is happening in the nature. It is like studying physics. You can study physics like looking at the nature. You see, okay, when an apple falls, there is something on the earth that is pulling the apple towards us, and it is not going to the space. So, what is that? So, the understanding of these laws of nature to its core through these philosophies is what Taoism is all about. It is not about writing formulas, finding equations. It is not about that. It is more about the kung fu. It is the time that you spend to understand this nature, to understand how things work, is the most essential aspect of Taoist culture. When you understand Taoism, you will you will slowly understand what acupuncture actually means, because acupuncture has its roots in Taoism. Unless you know what Taoism stands for, what yin and yang stands for, what is this duality, what are the principles that drive this duality, what is this yin and yang, how to distinguish between yin and yang, how they are related. Unless you answer this question and understand it to such an extent that you can just look at anything in nature and this is yin, this is yang, this is how they are interconnected, then only you can truly understand the nature of acupuncture, nature of traditional Chinese medicine, and nature of diagnosis that it represents. Because it has so many variations that even this simple yin and yang from head to toe can be divided innumerable. I'll give you an example. Let us say we talk about yin and yang with respect to water and stone. So, from a very basic perspective, you look at the water, you say, okay, this is moving, and the stone, that is stagnant. Okay, so we'll say, okay, the water is yang, the stone is yin. But it is again wrong, because yin and yang exists only when you have a quality you compare it with. If you change the quality, if you change the basic question, then the yin and yang again varies. The same stone and water, if you take into consideration their hardness, then the water is soft, so it becomes yin, and the stone is hard, so it becomes yang. The whole concept just becomes opposite. If you look at the fluid nature of it, we just talked about, then again the concept changes. If you look at the movement, if you look at the fluidity, the potential energy and the kinetic energy of both things, again, potential energy and kinetic energy is yin and yang in most basic form. The potential energy is more of a yin nature, the kinetic energy is more of a yang nature, because we are looking at the energy, how it flows. So if you compare the stone and water, then again, the stone has more potential energy, it becomes the yin again. And the water has more kinetic energy, so it becomes yang. Inside the water, if the water is in a wave form, it becomes more of a yang. Then a sea which is very stable, then it becomes more yin. So yin and yang concept are very variable depending on how you look at it. A lot of times we look at yin and yang and it tend to specify the direction as well. So in basic TCM theory, we say the yang is always rising, yin is going down. Again, what is it rising to? Here, another concept that we just mentioned is that yin and yang will always tend to go towards each other. They have this magnetic force, this force that is pulling them towards each other, because they are part of one uji, emptiness, which is split into two. So they tend to come towards each other. It is like you have a glass of water and try to slice it through. The water will just want to come back into its original state. So, what is this concept of yang always rises? There is no such thing as yang always rises, or the fire will always go above. Because what happens is we have a very stagnant mind. We light a fire, we see the flames are going up, the heat is rising. But what is it rising to? Isn't it rising to the cold? You understand? So the cold is the yin hot, or the fire is the yang hot. So the yang will go towards the yin. It is not going above, it is going towards the cold. Suppose, let us take an example of the sun. The sun is round ball of fire, but it is surrounded by this cold all around it. So where does the heat go? Does the heat rise above now? No, it is going all around it. So it will go only towards the cold aspect. So do not stagnate your mind by saying yang goes above, yin goes down, fire rises, water goes down. No, it depends. It depends on where it is. It depends on the potential of it. It depends on what is it getting attracted to. Because unless you understand these basic fundamentals of yin and yang, all your acupuncture concepts will be very stagnant. You will only think that, okay, fire is rising, that is why head is getting hot. That is why you're getting symptoms in your head. But why is it going there? It is going there, and what is it leaving behind? It is leaving behind cold. So if the fire is rising up, that means there is cold on top. That is why it tend to rise up. And it is leaving behind cold down. So how do you change this nature of energy? What is that you can make to make sure that this fire that is on top goes back to its original state? So let us understand some more details into how the yin and yang splits. We are familiar with the concept of yin and yang. So as the yin and yang keep on splitting, they tend to create more easy to understand concept. Say from yin and yang to, we tend to go into four, where you have one yang, another yang, one yin, another yang down, yin on top, and then there are two yin. So this is called Sushang. So Sushang is a more detailed representation of yin and yang. Further, if you keep another yang, add another yin and yang to this, then they will form Bagua. We have heard about Bagua a lot. I mentioned about fighting style called Bagua. You have heard about 8 trigrams. So 8 trigrams is this 3 line trigrams and 8 of it. So these 8 trigrams also represent yin and yang in its different natures. See, these also represent different levels of yin and yang inside our body. Okay, so we have this basic levels of yin and yang in our body. So this yin and yang can be split up to 64 times. So you will notice that in most of the theories we have this number 64. You talk about qualities of a person, say quality of Krishna, then the highest number of qualities that a person or a god can possess is 64. And the only Paramatma or the only God who has the 64 qualities is Krishna. So it's like Param Purushottam as a complete divine entity. So what does that mean? Isn't it very interesting that the number 64 is coming up as qualities of divine, and the same number 64 is the highest number of combination of yin and yang that can happen in Daoism. Isn't it very interesting? So these cultures, although they have a different name, different way of explaining the same thing, they are talking about the same nature of the universe in terms of qualities, in terms of attributes, in terms of variations. So this is how you should look at the nature. They are not different. How can it be different? We are talking about the same universe. We are talking about the same human beings. We are talking about the same mind that is actually understanding this universe. Only thing the words are different. That is why yesterday I mentioned very interesting. You don't get stagnant on the words. That is why when you say 64 trigram, they are talking about yin and yang aspect representing the universe, while in here we are talking about 64 qualities of Krishna, is again the universe. So try to understand yin and yang concept in a very detailed way. We'll make more and more detailed videos about yin and yang as we proceed, because this is something that cannot be explained very easily in words. So different examples will be used to explain this kind of concepts. So do like it and share it to people who might be interested in this kind of knowledge, who might be interested in understanding how acupuncture works, how this philosophies of Daoism works, how this basic understanding of Daoism works, how the nature is connected with this basic principle. And do subscribe to our channel so that every video we make, you get a notification of it and you can watch it as soon as it is released. Okay, thank you and stay tuned.